the computer has to remember so many steps when you do digital painting that the processing load is very heavy, especially within the architecture of a browser. So using browser-based freeware like Photopea, if you go too long without saving and then reopening it, you'll get lags in your brush. So just kind of pay attention to that. Okay, so now I'm going to start a new layer, and this is what I call the rough painting layer. And what's the difference between my base paint and my rough paint? Is my rough paint I'm going to do with a brush that is a lower opacity, about 75% opacity, or 70. It's very strong, but it's going to show a little bit of this underpainting through it. And I'm going to go ahead and label these. So this is my base painting. My base painting is at 100% opacity. To get rid of the white blank background is locked, so I can always replace it with another background if I need to. And at this phase, I often, and I think I will for my cat, which has a lot of contrast, right? I will, like we did for digital coloring, make a new background layer and fill it with gray. That's kind of optional, but it can help you see the colors a little bit better. And then I'm going to lock that. So the only layer I leave unlocked is the one I'm painting on, because it's a really hard lesson to learn, a bad mistake to make, to paint on the wrong layer, right? And then not know what's going on. It can happen. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my references and I'm going to just grab a little bit of it so I can zoom in a bit, duplicate it, and move that over here. So as I'm working on the head, I can look at the head of my cat, right? And then I'm going to lock that. And now, this is when I start to really build up my palette. And I'm going to start to get some of these really light whites, slightly off whites from my cat. Right? And I'll kind of push them off to the side. And the pale kind of purples and pinks that are in the ear. And the little cute, more saturated pink of the nose. And that kind of olive green yellow of the eyes. And on and on. Now I'm not only going for realistic color, but this helps me to start refining this. And I might, because I'm zoomed in, I might use a slightly smaller brush. Right now I'm at 200 pixels. I'm going to go down to about half of that. Right. And because my cat is covered with fur, as most cats are, not all cats, I am going to use a lot of kind of directional light strokes to build up this texture. And as I'm doing that, I'm kind of shaping in the features of my reference, of my cat. So he has his little muzzle. And you can see how that the red from underneath, the gold from underneath, it all kind of shows through. And then as I paint with these different colors, because they're only at 70% opacity, they make new colors that are blends between them. And why I like painting animals, I'm doing a human in the morning class, but animals, it's more forgiving. I can do more abstraction and still have it look like my animal than when I'm doing portraiture of human beings. We're less forgiving of proportions and of kind of exact aspects of likeness in human portraiture. Let's throw in some of the blue in there too. It's these little touches, right? So now I'm going to start framing around the eye and deciding how that eye shape is going to work. So I want the personality of my cat. Eventually there'll be whiskers. Very almond-shaped eye. Remember, I have my left hand just floating on the option button, so I can steal colors whenever I want to. And even though it looks like I'm painting with white and black are not what those lightest light and darkest dark are. It's a really dark blue, and it's kind of a creamy white. Okay, so as you paint in each layer, you're replacing the pixels that were there before. And what's fun is to turn off your layers and see, so this is my rough painting. This is kind of what it's going to look like. It's kind of like an impressionist painting or a pastel drawing. But it works on top of your base paint. And every once in a while, just hit Command S. And what other colors could I use for the black? So maybe just shift the color spectrum, and I'm going to use this purple as well. And I'll put it over on my palette. And let's get another one. How about more of a crimson? Now, because I'm at 70%, and because I made my own brush, right, every time I use it, even when it's really small, it has these little speckled variations to it that are adding to the texture of my paint surface. And that's a good thing. There's a little black Hitler mustache smudge on his nose. Put that in there. And you can see I'm zooming in a little bit, but not too much. I never want to go beyond 200%. Right now I'm at 100%. So this is, whatever I paint is actually what you'll see in the print. But I don't want to get so zoomed in that I just can't see what the whole picture is. Now, one quick trick for that is to go to Window and click on Navigator. And Navigator is a nice way where you can just kind of move to different parts, but you can also, it's mostly helpful because you can see the big picture of what you're painting all in one place. And that's really helpful. So it's natural to start on details that you like the eye, but don't try to finish it off. You kind of want to work to that level of finish everywhere as you go. And I like these golds to go along with my dark blue. So nice complements. And I'm not going to worry about those little whiskers until I've finished the rest of the rough painting. And those will probably go into my refined painting on the top. So the base painting layer is just for getting rid of all this, filling up all the space. And this rough painting is for getting the different color variations and the textures and really choosing your color palette. And even when I select the middle gray and I start painting that in, if I steal that color from myself, it will have color in it, right? Because that middle gray, when layered on top of other things, becomes gray versions of these different colors. So I'm just creating lots and lots of variation within my color palette. That's why I have the green in there. The crimsons. And it's hard when something's just black and white because everything's so extreme. But I do want to pay attention to like the distances between the white coloring on his mouth and his eye, right? Like if you're doing a human portrait, you want to pay attention to the distance between the bottom of the nose and the upper lip. And that's what helps signify likeness. Now in oil painting, this step is called scumbling. You're just kind of skipping along with a really rough brush, usually made of pig's hair, some bristle brushes. And so you're letting the dryness of the brush help soften your edges. So you're not trying to do any kind of precise line art or outlines or variations. You're just kind of stumbling around, wandering in a forest, recognizing what you want to keep as you go. You can see how that's building up. And you can see the areas I'm failing to address. So that's why I like to do my rough painting on a separate layer than my base painting, so I can just turn off my base painting and see what still needs to be treated, adjusted with that 70% opacity.